This is VOA Africa.
Good evening, I'm Esther Giduyot. It's Thursday, December 12th. This is Africa 54. Environmentalists applaud her selection, but critics are denouncing Time magazine's choice of teenage climate activist Greta Thunberg as its Person of the Year 2019. International Criminal Court President Judge Chile Iboe Osuji responds to criticism that the court targets Africans. And we'll look at how Kenyan coffee farmers are grappling with low prices and climate change. We'll have those stories in a moment, but first, the Nigerian military on Thursday continues to mourn the deaths of 71 soldiers killed during an attack by Islamist militants on a remote military camp, according to an army spokesman. Tuesday's aggression against the military is the worst in recent memory. Africa 54's Vincent Makori has more.
Islamist militants have killed 71 soldiers in an attack on a remote military camp in Niger, Army spokesman Colonel Boubacar Hassan said late on Wednesday. It's one of the deadliest assaults ever against the Nigerian military.
Le mardi 10 décembre 2019.
On Tuesday, December the 10th, 2019, the detachment of the Innate's military reconnaissance post near the border with Mali was attacked by heavily armed terrorists, estimated at several hundred. There followed combat of rare violence, combining artillery fire with the use of kamikaze vehicles by the enemy on the position from 1500 to 1800 hours local time. Reinforcements dispatched to the position allowed the situation to be stabilized, and it is currently under control. Unfortunately, we regret the following toll. On our friends' side, 71 soldiers killed, 12 wounded or missing. On the enemy's side, an important number of terrorists were neutralized.
President Mahamadou Issoufou cut short a visit to Egypt to return to Niger, his office said in a tweet. And he and French President Emmanuel Macron agreed to postpone a key security meeting in France this month to early 2020. Despite the commitment of thousands of regional and foreign troops, militants with links to Islamic State and Al-Qaeda have mounted increasingly lethal attacks across West Africa's Sahel region this year. The area has been in crisis since 2012, when ethnic Tuareg rebels and loosely aligned jihadists seized the northern two-thirds of Mali, forcing former colonial master France to intervene the following year to beat them back. But the jihadists have since regrouped and expanded their range of influence.
VOA's Vincent Makori reporting. Algeria held its presidential election Thursday despite the mass protest of thousands of people who flooded the streets in central Algiers, chanting, "No vote, we want freedom." The opposition views the ballot as a farce designed to keep the ruling elite in power. Police pushed forward with sticks in an attempt to break up their demonstrations, but retreated as more protesters arrived. The army, the strongest political player, sees the poll as the only way to restore calm by having voters choose a successor to former President Abdel Bouteflika, who was toppled by a popular uprising earlier this year after 2 decades in office. The Democratic Republic of Congo and World Health Organization have launched the third phase of their measles immunization campaign. They aim to reach nearly 19 million children across the country by the end of December. A measles epidemic in Congo has killed 5,000 people this year, many of them young children. There are more than 250,000 suspected measles cases, according to a report by WHO. Low immunization rates and high levels of malnutrition have fueled the epidemic and its high death rates, especially in North Kivu province, which is also reeling from an Ebola epidemic. Vaccination is almost challenging due to high insecurity that makes some areas inaccessible to aid workers. Environmentalists and climate change supporters worldwide are hailing Time magazine's decision to make teenage activist Greta Thunberg its 2019 Person of the Year. Her eloquent calls on political and industrial leaders to make courageous decisions on climate change have inspired young people worldwide. VOA's Latza Hook has more.
The 16-year-old Swedish student practices what she preaches. Last month, Greta Thunberg sailed across the Atlantic to bring her message to North America and then sailed back to Europe to emphasize that flying is not good for the environment. At a United Nations climate summit in Madrid on Wednesday, she accused political and business leaders of failing to treat climate change as an emergency.
In an emergency, you change your behavior. If there's a child standing in the middle of the road and cars are coming at full speed, you don't look away because it's too uncomfortable. You immediately run out and rescue that child. And without that sense of urgency, how can we, the people, understand that we are facing a real crisis?
Thunberg says pretending to act is worse than inaction.
The real danger is when politicians and CEOs are making it look like real action is happening when, in fact, almost nothing is being done, apart from clever accounting and creative PR.
Her supporters say she deserves Time's Person of the Year status.
She has to have attention, but not like she was a celebrity, because she's not a celebrity. She's an activist, a very good activist.
Thunberg began her campaign in 2018 by protesting outside the Swedish parliament once a week instead of going to school. She quickly drew the world's attention with her bold speeches accusing people in power of endangering future generations by ignoring the science on climate change. Thunberg has become a keynote speaker in nearly every major climate forum, including the United Nations, and has inspired young people around the world to stage massive protests demanding action on climate change. But her message is not universally popular. After her emotionally charged September speech in New York, U.S. President Donald Trump tweeted, "She seems like a very happy young girl," likely disparaging Thunberg's serious demeanor. Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro called her a brat after she condemned violence against indigenous people in the Amazon, and a guest on a Fox News show called her mentally ill, prompting the conservative network to issue an apology. Trump's eldest son, Donald Jr., criticized Time in a tweet for naming Thunberg over Hong Kong protesters. Conservative commentators lashed out at the media for using children to avoid critical analysis and debate on climate. Zlatica Hoke, VOA News, Washington.
In part two of Peter Clotty's interview with ICC President Chile Iboe Osuji, the judge rejects criticism that the court targets Africans. He also explains the conditions under which the court will accept cases of allegations of war crimes and crimes against humanity.
To me, about under what circumstances will the court decide to pick up a case, apart from the traditional three threshold that has to be met before the court picks up a case to investigate. For example, although Sudan is not a signatory, the court investigated the atrocities committed in Darfur, which effectively led to then President Omar Hassan al-Bashir's indictment by the court.
That's a brilliant question, and the one that causes a lot of confusion in the minds of people. Now, for the case to come to be picked up by the court, it needs to come through the referral of somebody, typically the state in whose territory the situation occurred, or the state whose national is accused of wrongdoing. So that's one way. That state may refer a case to the ICC. Another way, and typically these are states parties to the Rome Statute. You are a state party to the Rome Statute. You make a referral. There may be instances where a non-state party to the Rome Statute may still make a referral and basically indicate that they're happy to do that and by follow the judgments of the court.
Right.
So that's one way of referring a case is coming, states parties referring, or states referring the case. Another way that a case can come to the ICC is if the Security Council refers the case, typically because that situation may have occurred in the territory of a state that is not a state party to the Rome Statute. So under the auspices of the United Nations Security Council mandate for international peace and security, then they get to refer, the Security Council may then refer a case to the ICC. That's the example you cited.
Right.
Darfur situation was one of those. Another one was Libya.
Right.
Those instances. So those are the two ways cases come to the ICC. But
one of the criticisms is also that the court targets Africans. They say that for a majority of the cases being handled at the court, most of them are African related. As an African yourself, when you hear such criticisms, how do you react to that?
I can tell you bluntly that I'm not impressed by those criticisms. It's when people tell me that, I tell them, on whose behalf are you speaking? Are you speaking on behalf of the 800,000 Tutsi victims who were victims of the genocide in Rwanda? Are you speaking on behalf of the how many people in Sierra Leone who were amputated, hands amputated by their fellow human beings who felt they could do that? Do you speak on behalf of these people? Who or are you speaking on behalf of when you say court is targeting Africans, targeting those victims? Or is the complaint that perhaps the court is taking up questions of humanity in which there are African victims? Is that the narrative? Is that a complaint? That's usually why I'm not impressed by those complaints.
So what do you see as the ICC's role in Africa going forward, let's say in the next 5, 10 years to come?
For Africans, the matter of economic development is hugely important. Where war is erupting, you don't have economic activities going on. So this is one area where the ICC has value, in the sense putting pressure against those kinds of conduct so that people don't engage with them with as much of an ease as used to be the case before the creation of the ICC.
That was ICC Chief Chile Eboe Osuji speaking to our Peter Claudy. Voters in Britain are casting ballots Thursday in an early general election that may bring a long-awaited resolution to its departure from the European Union. The British electorate approved Brexit in a 2016 referendum. Prime Minister Boris Johnson says a parliamentary majority for his Conservative Party would allow him to push through a previously rejected divorce deal with the EU and carry out Brexit by January 31st. His challenger, Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn, says if he wins, Britain will hold a new referendum to ask if people still want to leave the European Union, or would they rather stay in the 28-member bloc. Official results of this poll are expected on Friday. We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, Kenyan coffee farmers struggle with a changing environment. You're watching Africa 54, and we'll be right back.
high, you just high, high, high. Nina ukani luka buseli, ngatimweo kapena ni malaria.
When you walk away, I wanna make you my woman. I don't wanna waste no time. I say, hold up, my mama. You know I'm wanting you. I say, hold up, my mama. Can I be the one for you? Tell me, where did you come from?
I'm Clara Frank, and here's what's trending. Hungry for something different? Meet Nigerian visual artist Hanifa Adam, who turns ordinary food products into colorful and edible masterpieces. The self-taught visual artist experiments with different kinds of food ingredients, such as spices and grains, to make her portraits, which she says celebrates African culture and heritage. Adam exhibits her work on her Instagram, where she has 30,000 followers. She sells her food portraits, but mostly works with food brands to provide visual content for artsy food advertisements. Next up, when Sue Owen was having chemotherapy for breast cancer 14 years ago, she wished for a sanctuary like this one in Canberra, Australia, a place where women could sip tea and become confident without a head of hair. Having a flair for colorful, creative headwear helped, meaning Sue's do's were often admired by other patients receiving treatment at Canberra's Calvary Hospital. Owen filled that need by opening Heads Up. It's a not-for-profit stall filled with wigs, turbans, scarves, and hats, run by a team of volunteers trained by Owen in fitting and styling. Now she's boosting the confidence of more female cancer patients, including the nurse who took care of her. And finally, Berlin-based urban farming startup InFarm is continuing its expansion into the United States, announcing a partnership with supermarket chain Kroger. The technology involves growing plants indoors in trays, using hydroponics, a way of growing plants without soil, in a climate and LED lighting-controlled glass case. Plants grown include lettuce, watercress, and a variety of herbs, which customers sell for prices at or below typical produce. With plants grown in-store, money is saved on transport and packaging. Founded in 2013 by 3 Israeli filmmakers turned entrepreneurs, it has more than 500 farms in stores and distribution centers worldwide across 7 countries. And that's what's trending today.
The Democratic-controlled U.S. House Judiciary Committee on Thursday is again debating articles of impeachment against President Donald Trump. Democrats are pushing to punish a leader they say abused his power, while Republicans criticize the process as politically motivated and lacking evidence. VOA's Richard Green reports from Capitol Hill.
The Judiciary Committee will please come to order.
The committee spent Wednesday night debating the articles, which accuse President Trump of abusing his office by soliciting a foreign government to interfere in the 2020 election and of obstructing Congress by directing his administration to ignore subpoenas as lawmakers investigated his conduct. The central allegation, as laid out by Committee Chairman Gerald Nadler, is that Trump pressured Ukraine by withholding $391 million in military aid while seeking a commitment from Ukrainian officials to investigate Joe Biden, the former U.S. Vice President and one of Trump's potential opponents in the 2020 election.
And when the President demands that a foreign government investigate his domestic political rivals, he corrupts our elections. To the founders, this kind of corruption was especially pernicious. Free and fair elections are the bedrock of our democracy. If our elections are corrupt, everything is corrupt.
The top Republican on the committee, Congressman Doug Collins, said Democrats have wanted to impeach Trump since the moment he took office, and that the facts of the case do not match the allegations they have presented.
The big lie that we're hearing perpetrated tonight is one, the end justifies the means. The lie is that the sham impeachment is okay because the threat is so real and so urgent and so imminent. The big lie is that political expediency is honorable and justifiable, and history has shown that to be untrue and dangerous.
The debate among the rank-and-file members largely fell among the same sharply divided partisan lines.
And I know that nobody is above the law, but the law means nothing if the accused, whether the man who breaks in your house or the president, can destroy evidence, stop witnesses from testifying, and blatantly refuse to cooperate in the investigation. I ask you to name somebody in your family or in your community who can do that.
This is not about Ukraine. Facts are on the president's side. Zelensky said he wasn't pressured. Ukrainians didn't even know aid was held at the time of the call, and most importantly, they did nothing to get the aid released. This is about one basic fact. The Democrats have never accepted the will of the American people.
Once the committee approves the articles, the full Democratic-controlled House is expected to vote on them next week. If, as expected, the full House approves the articles, the matter would then go over for trial to the Republican-majority Senate, which Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said Wednesday would happen next month. A conviction in the Senate would lead to Trump's removal from office, but that is highly unlikely because at least 20 Republicans would have to side with Democrats to achieve the required threshold of 67 of the chamber's 100 members. Richard Green, VOA News, Washington.
Climate change experts say world governments must sharply increase renewable energy production to meet emissions-cutting goals under the Paris Agreement. Green energies like wind and solar power are growing rapidly, but not fast enough. From the Spanish village of Maranchon, Lisa Brandt tells us what's at stake for the wind industry.
This wintry weather is good news for wind farms like this one.
We produce here the energy, the power that one city with 600,000 population is going to need in 1 year.
A decade ago, the 104-turbine Maranchon wind farm was the biggest in Spain. Now it's got competition. Spain has Europe's second biggest wind industry after Germany. There's plenty of growth opportunity. The Spanish government wants renewables to generate 3/4 of its electricity by 2030 and 100% by 2050.
We can compete against oil and gas and fossil fuels. Why? Because if you see the tendency for the past 10 years, prices have dropped a lot for both wind energy and PV energy.
Spanish power giant Iberdrola, which owns the Maranchon farm, generates nearly 1/4 of Spain's wind power. It's also investing in wind elsewhere in Europe, along with the United States, Latin America, and Australia. The company recently announced plans to phase out its last 2 coal plants, although it still supplies gas. By 2050, the International Energy Agency, or IEA, says renewables like wind and sun will provide more than 40% of the world's electricity. One of the most promising areas, offshore wind, could generate more than 18 times the total global electricity demand. But the IEA says overall, the growth of renewables is far below what's needed to reach sustainable energy goals.
Wind energy will have a very crucial role in the decarbonization and in the future of electricity.
Wind also provides jobs, roughly 300,000 of them across Europe, the world's second biggest wind energy producer after China. Here in Maranchon, residents were initially skeptical about the turbines, but the mayor says that has changed now.
They are happy because thanks to the revenues that the windmills bring to the municipality, the town has been able to renovate its water system, sanitation, roads, and not just in the town of Maranchon, which is in the district seat, but in 5 communities that are part of this municipality.
Saneamiento, calles, y no solamente en el municipio de Maranchón, que si dijéramos es la capital, sino en 5 pedanías que dependen de este municipio, están todas ellas renovadas gracias a los ingresos que nos dan los molinos. Por lo tanto, la gente hoy día
Opposition to wind farms still remains strong in some areas. Environmentalists say badly placed ones can impact some land and marine species.
Of course, we have to support renewable energies, but considering the conservation of biodiversity, not only birds, only bats, also bats are being affected.
But the industry's biggest challenge may be getting more political support and investment to grow so it can help meet the world's growing energy needs and counter the growing threat of climate change. Lisa Bryant for VOA News, Maranchon, Spain.
In our business report, coffee beans from small Kenyan farms often end up in specialty coffees from Berlin to San Francisco. But low prices, rising temperatures, and erratic rainfall are pushing farmers to the brink of collapse. Serena Chaudhry explains.
Farmer Shadrach Wambua Mutisia has been growing coffee up a winding hill in Kenya for 40 years. But like other small growers, he's struggling to cope with the impacts of low prices, rising temperatures and erratic rainfall. Now he's replacing his coffee bushes with banana, macadamia and avocado trees.
We never used to see so many diseases. We only experienced a little bit of coffee rust, but now we see so many diseases, some so severe that they dry up the coffee trees. That's our biggest challenge now.
Kenya's coffee production is tumbling. The U.S. Department of Agriculture forecasts the 2019-2020 harvest will hit a whopping 57-year low. And while the region only produces about 0.5% of global coffee, its Arabica version plays a large role in the high-quality market. Machakos, Mutisia's home county, is Kenya's 10th largest coffee-producing region. Still, more than three-quarters of its 200,000 farmers active in the 1980s have given up, according to the county's cooperative union head. The farmers who are left have started a savings and loan society, but the struggle may be far beyond their control. Global coffee prices plunged to 14-year lows this year, well below the cost of production in most of the world.
That was Serena Chaudhry of Reuters reporting. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, have a good evening.